Ever feel like you're searching for that kind of peace that lasts? Not just like fleeting happiness, but really deep down joy.
Yeah, that feeling of being truly content no matter what's happening around you.
Exactly. And that's what's at the heart of Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now, right?
Absolutely. It's a roadmap to a different way of being, really.
Yeah.
And today we're diving into those excerpts you chose.
Ready to unlock some of that power of now magic.
Let's do it. Tolle's work is really a guide to a different way of experiencing life, and it all starts with this, well, radical shift in how we understand our own minds.
He doesn't waste any time, does he?
Yeah.
The book jumps right into this whole idea that, get this, we are not our minds. It's one of those things that makes you stop and go, wait, if I'm not my mind, then what am I?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
Tolle's point is that our minds, and don't get me wrong, they're incredibly useful, but they often run on autopilot. It's that inner voice that just never seems to quit, the one that's full of worries and plans and judgments and
Oh, tell me about it. That inner critic can really take over sometimes.
exactly. And Tolle would argue that true freedom comes from recognizing that we're not those thoughts. We're the awareness that's observing them.
Okay. So, like, we're watching a movie and our thoughts are just images flickering on the screen.
Exactly. We're not the images themselves, we're the ones experiencing them.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get that. So, how does this idea, the separation from our thoughts, how does that connect to the pain body? You highlighted that concept earlier.
Ah, yes. The pain body. It's fascinating, really, but honestly a bit unnerving. Imagine this. It's like this accumulation of old emotional pain that we carry around.
Emotional baggage.
Yeah, but maybe even heavier, stickier. It's made up of all those past hurts, traumas, fears.
And it just sticks with us.
It does. And here's the thing. It can take over, literally. It can influence our thoughts, feelings, even our actions, often in ways that aren't in our best interest.
So, it's almost like having this shadow self that's like running the show sometimes, fueled by all that unresolved pain from the past.
Exactly. And the thing is, most of us aren't even aware it's happening. We just feel those familiar pangs of anger or sadness or fear without realizing where they're really coming from.
So, what can we do about it?
Well, here's the good news. Simply becoming aware of the pain body weakens its grip on us. It's like shining a light into a dark room. Suddenly, those shadows don't seem as scary.
That's a powerful image. So it's not about like suppressing those painful feelings or pretending they're not there. It's about really acknowledging them, seeing them for what they are, this energy from the past that doesn't have to control us anymore.
You've got it. And this leads to another point Tolle makes, the illusion of time. He argues that so much of our suffering comes from dwelling in the past, regretting things we can't change, or anxiously anticipating a future that hasn't even happened yet.
Ugh, I am so guilty of that. Constantly replaying past mistakes or worrying about what might go wrong.
It's exhausting,
It really is.
and it robs us of the only moment we truly have, the present moment. Tolle really emphasizes that the present moment is the only place where we can truly experience peace, joy, fulfillment. It's about learning to inhabit the life now fully,
Yeah.
letting go of that mental burden of past and future.
Easier said than done, right? Our minds are constantly pulling us in a million different directions.
A million and one.
But what I find so fascinating is how Tolle connects this idea of being present with these, and I love this phrase, portals, to a deeper reality, this unmanifested. He mentions it all the time.
Right, it's not some mystical realm far, far away.
So what is it?
Think of the unmanifested as that quiet space between your thoughts, like a source of peace and energy that's always there, just below the surface. It's the very source of life itself. And Tolle says it's accessible in every moment if we know how to look for it.
Okay, so we're starting to dismantle this pain body. We're trying to be more present, but where do we go from there? You've highlighted sections about these different portals to a deeper reality. Tell us more about how they work.
Well, Tolle described several, and they all point to the same idea. Shifting our attention from the external world to the inner world of pure consciousness. Imagine them as doorways that open to a deeper level of awareness, a more expansive way of being. And maybe the most accessible portal is the present moment itself.
So by becoming fully present, really inhabiting the order, now we can access this deeper realm that seems both incredibly simple and honestly impossibly difficult.
You're right, it takes practice, right? Our minds are so used to dwelling in the past or racing ahead to the future that staying present, it takes work. But think about it like this. Have you ever been totally engrossed in an activity like, I don't know, painting, playing music, even having a really engaging conversation?
Where time just seems to disappear.
Exactly. In those moments, we're not thinking about the past or the future. We're completely absorbed in the now. And Tolle argues that in those moments of presence, we catch glimpses of that deeper reality, that unmanifested realm that's always available to us. It's like we're shifting our awareness from the constant chatter of the mind to a deeper, more peaceful state of being.
That makes sense, those moments when we lose ourselves in something we love. But how do we cultivate that kind of presence more intentionally, especially in the midst of our busy lives? I mean, Tolle talks about using our senses as anchors to the present moment, like really paying attention to the sights, sounds, and sensations around us.
Precisely. He says, and this is a good one, give yourself to the moment. Let life be your teacher. It's about finding even those simple, everyday experiences that can pull us out of our heads and ground us in the now. Like, have you ever really paid attention to the taste of your morning coffee?
Or the feeling of the sun on your skin.
Yes. Or maybe it's the sound of your dog's bark or the laughter of a loved one.
It's about finding those little moments of presence throughout the day, those things we often take for granted.
You've got it. It's about shifting our attention from that internal world of thoughts and worries to the richness of the present moment.
Mm.
And as we cultivate this practice of presence, we begin to open ourselves up to the possibility of experiencing those portals, those glimpses of a deeper reality more and more frequently.
So we're starting to see a pattern here. It all begins with that initial recognition that we are not our minds, that we have the power to choose which thoughts we allow to take up residence in our awareness. And from that place of separation from the mind, we can start to dismantle the pain body, simply by becoming aware of its presence and choosing not to engage with its drama, then by cultivating presence, becoming more aware of the pattern. Now we start to access these portals to a deeper reality, to the unmanifested, which Tolle describes as the source of true peace, joy, and fulfillment. Now let's explore some of those other portals.
It's like we're opening ourselves to a whole new way of experiencing life, one that's not bound by the limits of the thinking mind.
It's like stepping outside the matrix, almost. Now, you've also highlighted sections about accessing this unmanifested realm through the inner body, and that seems like a less familiar portal. What did you make of that, listener?
It's an intriguing one, isn't it? We tend to think of the body as so separate, separate from our spiritual selves. But Tolle suggests it's actually a gateway to a deeper dimension of being.
So instead of just living in our heads all the time,
Right.
we start to experience our bodies as vessels of wisdom, of awareness.
Exactly. Start by simply tuning in to the physical sensations, the feeling of your breath, the weight of your body in the chair, the gentle rise and fall of your chest.
It seems almost too simple.
It does, doesn't it?
Huh.
But Tolle argues that as we cultivate this kind of embodied awareness, we start to tap into this deeper intelligence, that wisdom that's within our very cells.
So by connecting with the body, we're also connecting with something much larger than ourselves, something that's been called gut feelings or inner knowing.
Precisely. We start to listen to our bodies, not just with our minds, but with our hearts, and suddenly we're accessing this whole new level of understanding.
Now, you've also marked sections about finding portals through the cessation of thinking, which, let's be honest, feels like a Herculean task in today's world. Our minds are constantly bombarded, right? Information, notifications, to-do lists. So how can we even begin to quiet that internal chatter?
You're telling me. And Tolle would be the first to acknowledge it's a challenge, believe me. He'd probably say that our addiction to constant stimulation, to always being on, it's a sign of our resistance to the present moment.
Because if our minds are always occupied with the past or the future, those worries or plans,
Right.
then we're never fully here, are we?
Exactly. Tolle suggests practices like meditation, mindfulness, as ways to kind of train the mind to create those precious gaps in the stream of thought. Because that's where the unmanifested can reveal itself.
He compares it to the stillness between musical notes, saying that silence isn't just the absence of sound, it's a presence in and of itself.
And from that stillness, from that space of pure awareness, we can start to experience the world in a whole new way. And it's not about emptying the mind completely, but just creating space for a different kind of knowing to emerge.
It's like we're shifting from thinking our way through life to feeling our way through it.
There you go.
Trusting that deeper intelligence that's always present, beneath the surface. Now, another portal you've highlighted is the observation of space, and that one really piqued my curiosity. What's so significant about space? I mean, it seems, empty.
It seems counterintuitive, right? We're so focused on objects, on the stuff of life. But Tolle suggests that if we can shift our attention to the space that surrounds those objects, something remarkable happens. He says space isn't actually empty, but it's teeming with potential, with this unmanifested energy of creation.
So it's like we're training ourselves to look beyond the forms, to the formless, to the essence that underlies all of creation.
Exactly. It's like shifting our focus from the individual notes in a symphony to the silence between them, the space that gives those notes meaning and allows the music to flow.
Think about it, listener. Have you ever just stared up at a vast, star-filled sky or gazed out at the endless expanse of the ocean?
You felt a sense of awe, a feeling of being deeply connected to something so much larger than yourself. Precisely. In those moments, we're connecting with the unmanifested, with that infinite potential that exists in every atom of existence. And Tolle argues that we can access this portal anytime, anywhere, simply by becoming aware of the space that surrounds us, the space that's always present, always available.
It's about cultivating a sense of wonder, an appreciation for the mystery of life, for the vastness and interconnectedness of all things. Now, speaking of vastness and interconnectedness, we can't ignore the concept of the pain body, which you mentioned earlier. It feels so relevant to understanding not just our own suffering, but also the collective pain that we see in the world around us.
It's a concept that's both fascinating and, frankly, a bit disturbing. Tolle describes it as an accumulation of unresolved emotional pain from our past, both personal and collective.
So it's more than just our own individual baggage. It's like we inherit the pain of our ancestors, of humanity as a whole.
It is.
That's a heavy thought.
It is heavy. Think of it as this energetic shadow that kind of hangs over humanity, fueled by war, violence, trauma, injustice. And this collective pain body is passed down through generations, creating this field of negativity that, unfortunately, we all share.
So we're all carrying the weight of the world's suffering, in a sense. No wonder it feels so heavy sometimes.
Exactly. But here's the empowering part. Awareness is the key to healing. Tolle argues that by bringing awareness to the pain body, both individually and collectively, we can start to dissolve its power over us.
You know how sometimes it feels like you're ruled by this cloud of negative emotions?
Oh, yeah.
Like you're not even in control of your own reactions.
That's the pain body at work right there. But imagine this, listener. Instead of getting swept away by those emotions, you pause. Take a step back and you simply observe them. You notice the anger, the fear, the sadness without judgment. You see them as passing energy, as visitors in your awareness, rather than identifying with them as you.
So it's about creating a space, like between ourselves and those emotions. Like
Right.
we're stepping out of the eye of the storm and into a place of stillness and observation.
Exactly. And it's a subtle shift, but it's incredibly powerful. Because as we create that space, as we become the witness rather than the participant in those emotional dramas, we start to reclaim our power.
We're no longer at the mercy of those old reactive patterns. We're no longer controlled by the pain body, whether it's our own personal pain or the collective suffering of the world.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that we are not our emotions.
Hmm.
We are the awareness that's experiencing those emotions. And in that space of awareness, we have the power to choose how we respond.
It's about reclaiming our freedom, our ability to choose love over fear, peace over conflict, joy over suffering. Now, speaking of reclaiming our power, Tolle also talks about the importance of not identifying with our roles and labels, those external definitions that often shape our sense of self. Why is this disidentification so crucial for spiritual awakening? And how do we even begin to disentangle ourselves from those deeply ingrained identities?
It's crucial because those roles and labels, while they may seem like such an integral part of who we are ultimately just stories that we tell ourselves. They're constructs of the mind, temporary and ever-changing. And when we cling too tightly to those roles, whether it's our job title, our relationship status, even our personality traits, we limit ourselves. We create this false sense of self that's based on external validation, on fleeting circumstances.
It's like we're trying to fit ourselves into boxes that were never meant to contain the fullness of who we are.
Exactly. Think about it, listener. Have you ever noticed how your sense of self kind of shifts depending on who you're with or what you're doing? We might feel really confident and capable at work, but then insecure and unsure of ourselves in romantic relationships. We might identify as a good listener, but then find ourselves, interrupting and dominating conversations.
So our sense of self is fluid, contextual, constantly changing.
Precisely. And Tolle's invitation is to recognize that our true nature, the essence of who we are, lies beyond those fleeting identities. It's the awareness that's witnessing those roles. the consciousness that's shining through those temporary forms.
It's like we're the actors on the stage of life, and those roles and labels are just costumes we wear.
I love that.
We can play different parts, but we're not defined by those parts.
That's a great analogy. And Tolle suggests that by recognizing the temporary and illusory nature of those roles, we free ourselves to connect with our true selves, that boundless awareness that's always present beneath the surface.
It's about recognizing that we are not our stories. We are the storytellers.
Ooh, I like that.
And we have the power to choose which stories we want to tell, which roles we want to play, which aspects of ourselves we want to express. So how do we start to practice this disidentification in our daily lives? Because it seems like those roles and labels are so ingrained in how we think, how we interact with the world.
It starts with simple awareness, paying attention to the language we use to define ourselves, noticing those moments when we cling tightly to a particular role or label, when we catch ourselves saying things like, I'm a failure, or I'm not good enough. We can pause and ask ourselves, is this really true? Or is this just a thought, a belief, a story I'm telling myself?
So it's about questioning those habitual thought patterns, those default settings that keep us trapped in these limited versions of ourselves.
Exactly. And it's about cultivating a sense of detachment from those roles and labels, recognizing that they don't define us. We can still show up as a doctor, a parent, a friend, but we do so with the awareness that these are just roles we're playing, not the totality of who we are.
We're not limiting ourselves to those definitions. We're allowing ourselves to be more expansive, more fluid, more aligned with the truth of our being. Now, speaking of aligning with our true being, let's dive into those portals that you mentioned earlier. Those pathways to experiencing the unmanifested realm that lies beyond the limitations of the mind. You've highlighted several of these portals in the excerpts, and they're all so intriguing. Can you tell us more about these portals, how they can help us access this deeper reality?
Absolutely. Tolle describes these portals as like pathways that lead us beyond the confines of the egoic mind, allowing us to experience a more expansive, more interconnected way of being. And he emphasizes that these portals aren't physical places. They're states of consciousness that we can access through various practices and perspectives.
So they're like doorways that open to a deeper level of awareness, a more profound way of experiencing life itself.
Precisely. And as we've already touched upon, one of the most accessible portals is the present moment itself. By cultivating presence, by bringing our full attention into the bot. Now, we create a gap in that incessant stream of thoughts, the one that often keeps us tethered to the past or the future, preventing us from fully experiencing the richness of the present moment.
So it's about becoming aware of the present moment without judgment, without getting swept away by those thoughts and emotions that are constantly vying for our attention.
Exactly. It's about developing this mindful awareness of what's happening right here, right now, the sensations in our bodies, the sounds around us, the sights, the smells, without attaching to them or judging them. It's about simply observing, experiencing, being.
It's about savoring the richness of each moment, allowing ourselves to be fully present with whatever arises, without needing it to be different than it is.
Beautifully said. And as we cultivate this practice of presence, we begin to access those deeper dimensions of ourselves, those realms of peace, joy, and interconnectedness that Tolle speaks of.
It's like we're shifting from a narrow, ego-driven experience of life to a more expansive, heart-centered way of being, one that's rooted in presence, compassion, and a deep appreciation for the mystery and wonder of existence. Now let's explore some of those other portals, those other pathways to awakening. It feels like we're peeling back the layers, like all that conditioning, and we're starting to see a whole new way of experiencing ourselves and the world.
It's a journey of rediscovering who we truly are beneath all those layers.
Getting back to the source,
Yep.
that pure awareness that's like always been there, even when it's hidden by all the busyness of our minds.
Exactly. And Tolle suggests that self-inquiry can be a really powerful tool for this process of uncovering.
You mean like asking ourselves those deep questions
Yeah,
about who we are, what we believe, what truly matters, the ones that kind of make us squirm a little because they require real honesty.
precisely. It's not always comfortable, but it's in that discomfort that real growth happens.
Right?
Tolle talks a lot about the importance of questioning our beliefs, especially the ones that are causing us suffering. He encourages us to, Shine a light on those deeply ingrained stories we tell ourselves.
About who we are, what we're capable of, what the world is like.
All of it.
It's like we're taking inventory of those beliefs that are no longer serving us, those thoughts that keep us feeling stuck or scared or limited.
Exactly. And it's not about judging ourselves for having those beliefs.
Right.
It's about recognizing that they're just thoughts, stories we've created based on our past experiences,
Mhm.
and that we have the power to choose different thoughts, different stories that actually support our growth and well-being.
So the next time we catch ourselves thinking, I'm not good enough or I'll never be able to do that, we can hit the pause button
Yes,
and ask ourselves, is this really true? Or is this just an old story I'm telling myself, a belief that's no longer serving me?
exactly.
Yeah.
And we can ask ourselves, what would it feel like to choose a different thought, a more empowering belief?
Right.
What if I were to embrace the possibility that I am capable, I am worthy, I am enough?
It's about shifting from a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of abundance, from a place of fear to a place of love and possibility. And Tolle also emphasizes the importance of self-love and compassion throughout this whole process. It's not about beating ourselves up for not being enlightened enough.
Yeah,
It's about approaching ourselves with the same kindness and understanding we'd offer a good friend.
absolutely. We can't truly connect with our true selves if we're constantly judging and criticizing ourselves, can we? That inner critic, it's just another voice of the ego, trying to keep us small and safe by reminding us of all our flaws and shortcomings.
It's like that old saying, you can be your own worst enemy.
Oh, for sure.
But we don't have to listen to that voice. We can choose to turn down the volume on the inner critic and turn up the volume on self-love and compassion. Because ultimately, as Tolle reminds us, our true nature is love. It's who we are at our core.
And when we connect with that love, that inherent worthiness, we naturally extend that same compassion and understanding to others. We start to see the world through the lens of love.
We see our interconnectedness with all beings.
Exactly.
Now, Tolle's work is often seen as a guide to spiritual enlightenment. What exactly does he mean by enlightenment? Is it like this blissful state we achieve by meditating on a mountaintop for years?
He describes enlightenment not as a destination, but as a journey,
Okay.
a continuous process of awakening to the truth of our being.
So it's not about becoming someone different, but about realizing who we truly are beneath those layers of conditioning, those stories, those roles we play.
Exactly. Tolle's teachings are about bringing a deeper level of awareness and presence to every aspect of our lives, our relationships, our work, our interactions with the world.
So as we bring more awareness to our thoughts, cultivate a sense of presence, practice non-resistance, and approach ourselves and others with compassion, we naturally move closer to that state of enlightenment. That recognition of our true nature as pure awareness, pure consciousness.
It's a journey, not a destination. And the beauty of it is that it's available to all of us. We don't need to change who we are. We simply need to remember who we truly are.
It's about recognizing that peace, joy, and fulfillment aren't some distant destination, but are available right here, right now,
In every moment.
if only we know how to look. And that, listener, is the heart of the power of now. Tolle challenges us to step outside the confines of our minds, to shed those layers of conditioning, and to embrace the fullness of who we truly are, pure, radiant awareness. It's a journey that requires courage, compassion, and a willingness to question everything we thought we knew about ourselves and the world. But as we've explored in this deep dive, the rewards are nothing short of life-changing.